Welcome to Branding the Beltway. I'm Stacey Piper, a 25-year government marketing expert and the host of the podcast that helps you level up your B2G marketing game with actionable insider tips and real-world case studies. If you're in the business of doing business with the government, you're in the right place. Each episode delivers straight-to-the-point strategies from senior marketing leaders familiar with navigating the unique world of GovCon. In each episode, we'll first explore that month's topic on a macro level, talking strategy with CXOs. Then we'll deep dive into the same topic on a micro level, examining the practical approach of development and implementation. We're talking brand awareness, content strategy, and the campaign tactics that actually move the needle. Whether you're a CXO, a growth strategist, or marketing practitioner looking to strengthen your federal position, Branding the Beltway is your essential resource for driving results and winning more contracts. Let's connect strategy to execution and position your brand to win. Hi, and welcome to the June episode of Branding the Beltway. I'm your host, Stacey Piper, and today we have with us award-winning government marketer, Lesley Rogers, and we're going to be talking about demand generation in government. And so really, we're going to study why GovTech leads stall and how government marketers can improve conversion. Lesley is the Director of Marketing at FedHIVE. FedHIVE is a FedRAMP High hosted accelerator platform that helps innovative cloud technology companies achieve FedRAMP authorization and DoD compliance faster with less stress, less operational burden, less risk, less unnecessary re-engineering, and maintain their compliance over time. Welcome, Lesley. Tell us a bit about yourself.
Thanks, Stacey. Really excited to be here. Thank you so much for having me. So I'm Lesley Rogers, and I'm currently the Director of Marketing for FedHIVE. I come to FedHIVE with more than 20 years of experience helping global technology companies drive brand and business growth and engagement in the public sector, as well as financial services and big tech. I've worked for Fortune 500 companies like NetApp and Lumen, as well as startups and mid-sized companies like Rackspace. I've led strategic marketing and worked across the full spectrum of marketing functions: demand generation, campaigns, digital, social, events and conferences, ABM, public relations, pretty much everything. And, I really can relate to the challenges that are out there, no matter what size company you work for. And I think it's so funny because I often get asked, well, the big companies must have had it so much more together and the processes must have been so much better. And I'm like, oh, no. And I think in tech, it's so funny because we do for our customers in a way that a lot of times we don't do for ourselves. And so it's really, and especially in the public sector, a lot of times, what goes on in corporate can't be incorporated into the public sector space, especially. So you have to really be creative and you have to really take ownership and a lot of times think outside the box and go outside the box in order to prove the value and the return on investment for the incredible amount of work that you're doing in marketing. So I'm really excited to be here today to share some of my insights, especially in my last few companies where I've really had to dig in is that, strategic marketing alignment with sales and how are we measuring value? How are we proving that back to corporate? How are we measuring it? It's not easy, but, it's really important. And I think it makes us even more connected sometimes to our business than some of our peers in enterprise or commercial or some of the other spaces.
Absolutely. Well, I think that your decades of experience are really going to help the listeners get, practical advice, from kind of inside baseball speak. A reminder to our listeners that the first half of the program, Lesley and I are going to attack this topic from a strategic kind of 30,000 foot view lens, as if we're talking to her executive leadership team or executive leadership teams in similar GovTech companies. And Then after the commercial break, we will come back and look at it at a more tactical, practical level, as if we're talking to the government marketing team on how to implement these strategies. So with that, we'll dive right in. I know that lead generation in GovTech has become increasingly complex. You know, you mentioned public sector buying cycles are long and often relationship driven, sometimes even for solutions, they're, you know, RFP driven. So how should GovTech CXOs rethink lead generation strategies to better align with how buyers actually make decisions in the government space?
Great question. And I think this is where a lot of companies get tripped up, because I think they tend to think that it has to be one or the other, like campaign driven or account based. And a lot of times they split those things up. But in reality, it's both. The key is to really understand the customer you're trying to reach. And what I see happen a lot is that companies launch these broad campaigns without really being clear on who they're targeting or what they're trying to influence. It's like, oh, well, let's just run it and we'll say one message to everyone. And then what happens is you generate activity, but it doesn't necessarily move accounts forward. And especially in government, when you think about segmenting out the accounts, it's, you know, what are the accounts that are make or break? What are the deals that cannot slip? And that could be repeat deals or it could be new deals. And there's absolutely still a place for that higher level corporate campaign. And those are important for brand awareness, top of funnel engagement. Don't take that away. But, you know, where do you evolve after that? And that's where, you know, you can take a look at the big picture, keep those leads coming in and nurture them, but then segmenting out where are the leads that align to those accounts that are the big deals, the must wins, where marketing then has to really focus on more of that, you know, account based engagement. So in an ideal world, you're using the broad campaigns to create the initial interest, but then you get more targeted, right? You're segmenting those leads based on account fit, where they are in the buying cycle, how strategic they are to the business. And for, you know, the higher value accounts, it's where you layer in that ABM approach. And that's where the relationships and precision totally matter. And then the other big shift is measurement. So instead of just looking at how many leads you generated and from that 10,000 foot level, you have to start looking at how you're influencing accounts over time and how you're engaging them and how you're moving the opportunities forward, and then how you're contributing across the full life cycle of a deal. Because really, you know, in the space, the lead's the starting point, it's not the outcome. And that's a mindset shift actually at the C levels in many, many companies, because it's been about, what's my volume? How many leads? How many conversions? And that's great, but we know marketing is not a moment in time. I've been doing this for more than 20 years. Okay, almost 25 years. And you know, it's today an average of 30, 40, 50 touches. And when you talk to a salesperson and you're in your marketing meeting, your salesperson is going to be like, that's my relationship. I've been working on it for 4 years. Your event touched them 12 months ago. How are you saying that that's marketing generated pipeline? And they're right. It's not marketing generated or sales generated. It is collaborative relationship generated, and over time, over so many different touches between marketing and sales. And that's a strategic mindset shift that has to happen. And it started in some companies, but most of the companies I've been in have been like, how many are you bringing in? It's quantity for the dollar spent, not quality. And I think that's a miss.
Absolutely. So, you know, you mentioned, you know, shifting from primarily looking at like lead volume to some of these other KPIs that we can look at. What you mentioned, like this kind of attribution, you didn't use that word, but right, like the attribution of whether marketing generated or converted that lead or sales did. And it's a very like us and them mentality, right? And like, I don't know about you, but I've never been compensated in a government marketing role for lead generation or closing, conversions or anything, whereas sales is compensated very often on those kinds of metrics. So what ways have you found to kind of change that narrative at the top and get that alignment and that collaboration so it isn't an us versus them?
Yeah, I think that's a big one. And so I think you have to start with there's a fundamental kind of rift that I see whenever I'm coming to a company and I'm looking at how marketing reports success and how sales considers marketing success. And they're speaking two completely different languages. So, that's a really big issue. And so when we think about alignment, there's strategic alignment from the very start. Like, the most successful marketing organizations are the ones that are working in partnership with sales, right? And I would go out in front of anybody and say that your alignment and your relationship with your sales leaders is the most important, because if you are aligned with the sales strategy and the sales leaders, that relationship generally, then they trust you as the marketing leader to do the things that will support that growth, but they will also be your biggest champion. And especially if you're in an organization that has multiple markets, generally corporate doesn't quite understand public sector. It's the special snowflake. And so your biggest champion is going to be your sales leader, right? And if you're in lockstep, you create that language. This is how we're going to define success together. And then you talk to your marketing leadership and say, okay, this is what matters to us, right? The companies that do it well combine and connect everything like campaigns, account insight, long-term nurturing into a cohesive strategy. And then, are able to switch the narrative away from spray and pray, it's quantity of leads, then down to quality of how you're helping the business grow. What are the tactics that are actually making impact? And I'm not saying big things aren't important, right? But when you can see the needle move, and I would say that's influence, right? I hate when people talk about a lead being generated from one marketing thing. It's about influence. It's about how many deals you're closing in your key accounts. It's about, making sure that your growth accounts are growing. Even as big of a budget as somebody like Adele has, you still don't have enough money to be everything to everybody and hit everyone in the most meaningful way. So it's really evaluating based on, your land, expand, protect, how are you going to invest in those, and how are you going to define success with your sales leader? If it's land, 20 new accounts, 20 new logos, okay, then you invest in those 20 logos, right? If it's, protect these high value targets, existing customers, then those are your campaigns to protect. And your tactics are going to vary depending on, a grow campaign is going to be much broader tactics than a protect campaign or an expand campaign. So it's really just going to matter based on what type of what type of business that is, what type of account that is.
Absolutely. So it's, I came from the world where an ABM campaign was not necessarily a lead gen campaign, right? And so you mentioned kind of not being a one-trick pony. And when we have this long sales cycle, right, and you have to engage, I think you mentioned like 40 to 50 touch points throughout that sales cycle, right? The traditional lead gen is that the acquisition of that person's name and information at the beginning, but at the beginning of that cycle, like somewhere toward the top of the funnel after they've engaged with some ungated content. So how should executives think about morphing lead generation into just one element of what they're doing to support the sales pipeline? And what other kinds of things should they be thinking about to really, that nurture and that stickiness to engage the audience repeatedly so that they will be, sales ready?
And I think that's where, when we look at strategic marketing, and it gets hard sometimes because I've been in an organization where I've been the only person doing public sector marketing with the support of some corporate. I've also led public sector marketing, but then you have someone who's in charge of like the campaigns and programs, and then you have field marketing. And a lot of times those things are not being planned in conjunction with each other. When you think about true strategic marketing, it is everything combined and working together in a plan between your demand gen, your ABM, your social, your PR, your events and conferences, everything from your webinars to your podcasts to your videos to all the new engagement. Then you are not going to actually be moving things through, the funnel the way they could be in a more impactful way. And also not going to be seeing the business results because you're not going to be probably targeting the same things. So it's really important if you're separate organizations to align. And so I think it's also creating the right kind of messaging and the right kind of impact. And that's where, a lot of times that deviates from corporate. How can I create my story for my customer and make sure that it is impactful and differentiated from my competitors? And then the other thing I would add, and we overlook this so much in public sector, everyone who works in government is a person. They are people. They are impacted emotionally the same way anybody else is. So if you connect with that emotion, you get more impact back. They're like, they understand me. The technology companies tend to lead technology forward when they should be leading emotion forward, but they want to understand that your solution solves their pain point and their problem in a truthful, realistic way, in the easiest way possible for them. Yeah.
You mentioned, that leaders should be thinking about success metrics other than lead volume. And, obviously, when you talk about attacking demand gen the way you do with a more kind of comprehensive approach and set of, brand awareness and thought leadership and other types of campaigns, what are the success metrics that you hold up for executives to see for your lead generation activities?
So a couple of things. I think that in our world, qualified leads is still really, really important, but how are you measuring that? I think a lot of people rely on the CRM to sort of map, and that is good if you've set it up the right way. But oftentimes you have marketing ops and sales ops each setting up a part of the funnel. But more than that, it's where are the qualified leads, right? And that's where you have to work with your sales team or your sales ops team, your marketing ops team, to say, how do we set up flows the right way against target accounts? And that's, again, you've got here are your higher level campaigns where it's just sort of capturing everything that you long-term nurture. And those nurture flows are so important. Companies will very oftentimes put a corporate nurture flow around a public sector nurture flow, and that's not good. So you want to really be cognizant of making sure you have public sector nurture flows. And then, setting up the right kind of rules around your target accounts so that as those leads do come in, defining by title, agency, different things, how they get measured. So quality leads that convert are really, really important. And I think that is a justifiable measurement for marketing. Are your marketing activities hitting your target accounts? It's not always possible in some organizations based on how challenging the existing setup is. A lot of companies are on equal playing field, and those that are going to win are really going to invest their money into marketing, both at the brand level and at the lead level. And the brand level, oftentimes, they will look at that from a corporate level, but not necessarily a public sector level from an investment standpoint. And I think it's absolutely critical that you siphon off funds for marketing that is brand based in the public sector. So important.
Absolutely. Yeah, it establishes that authority and credibility to make those prospective customers even give your content the time of day. And what I'm hearing is that one thing that executives need to be thinking about when they're in GovTech and lead gen is part of the go-to-market strategy, is that they also really need to think through their lead management process and their lead scoring process, which is, often marketing is implementing the lead scoring, but they are not necessarily coming up with the schema for it. And the lead management process is typically owned in sales. So that is another huge reason for that alignment and collaboration.
Well, and I would say, and this might be unpopular when I say it and other marketers hear it, I do not believe that our ownership stops at lead handoff. And I will tell you why. So in a lot of organizations, the SDR team, right, they are compensated on how many phone calls they make, how many meetings they set up. Sales is pounding the pavement. A lot of times sales, especially in public sector, we are a long game, but they're not treated as a long game. They are under pressure to get things in quarter. It's like, what can you pull forward? What can you get me? And it's like, that's not necessarily the way our business works, right? But, so there is often misalignment between the sales team and the SDR team, and they, in some instances, don't even communicate. And so that's where a lot of times your lead goes to die. And a lot of times the SDRs are not necessarily trained in public sector. So I would say, training SDRs and etiquette around public sector is so important, but also salespeople actually helping to mentor the SDRs is really important. And their communication is really important because that's your lead flow. As a marketer, I think it's still our responsibility to help make sure those conversations are happening. We are a team. It's not sales, marketing stops here, sales goes over here. We are a team. We're all working for the same goal to make the company successful. And to do that, we have to be partners. I know, unpopular.
Absolutely. Well, marketers will be the connective tissue as needed. Well, thank you so much, Lesley. We're going to take a quick commercial break. And when we come back, we're going to examine this same topic from the tactical, practical lens. This episode of Branding the Beltway is brought to you by Piper Strategies and Orange Slices. Piper Strategies, marketing that moves the needle. Piper Strategies is a full-service creative agency for leaders serious about growth. We decode the complex, translating mission-driven work into clear, compelling narratives. Our clients expand their reach, communicate with impact, and earn trust in competitive markets so they can win more work. We don't just deliver results, we build your internal marketing muscle. With Piper Strategies, clients grow with us until they outgrow us. It's a partnership-first, un-agency approach that not only gets you noticed and builds credibility, but also scales your brand and your team. Learn more at piperstrategies.com. Orange Slices, fresh intelligence for B2G success. Cut through the noise with Orange Slices, a trusted source for public sector insights, teaming opportunities, and procurement intel. With a playful name and a powerful platform, they're serious about making data accessible and usable so the entire GovCon community can thrive. For resources, visit orangeslices.ai. Welcome back to Branding the Beltway. the June episode, Why GovTech Leads Stall and How to Improve Conversion with Lesley Rogers. Lesley, we just examined this topic from the strategic lens, and now we're going to dive a bit deeper and talk about how you empower your team and talk to other marketing leaders at other organizations on how to do this. We all know that there's this kind of lead gen black hole. Where have you seen the biggest breakdowns in lead gen funnels? And what are some things that you've found that can help patch those holes?
So honestly, most of the breakdowns I see aren't at the top of the funnel. They happen after the lead is generated. So a lot of GovTech organizations are actually pretty good at driving initial engagement. Like we do a lot of events, campaigns, digital programs, webinars, right? You name it, we do it. And that part's usually working. It's really what happens after that, kind of initial engagement. And once leads enter the system, they often fall into what I call the abyss of nothingness. And that's usually because of fragmented processes, unclear ownership, systems that aren't aligned. Again, they're created. You've got part of that process created by marketing ops, the scoring, putting things in, how they're aligning to accounts. And then you have, the rest of the flow governed by sales. And that's, how it gets to an SDR, how the SDR follows up. I mean, at NetApp, they actually had set up Salesforce where client execs could not actually get a lead. So it had to convert from a lead straight into an opportunity, which the client execs almost always closed out because they didn't know what it was. So again, things that just aren't aligned. And so, you've got CRM environments as well that aren't built for workflows or corporate processes and compliance requirements that we have in public sector, which also slows everything down. So, there's a lot of protected data inside of our public sector accounts. And a lot of times when corporate sets up your CRM, they're not taking that into account. When I first started at NetApp, they had a completely different CRM for the account execs than they did for the SDRs and marketing. They had Salesforce. So what happens then is either the leads don't get followed up on at all, or they don't make it to the right person. Going back to, we uncovered 30,000 leads sitting in an unassigned account because of broken routing logic. And so when you talk about funnel performance, I always say it's not really top of the funnel problem. It's a systems and alignment problem. At the end of the day, if marketing, sales, and leadership are not aligned on who owns what, how leads flow, what are the goals? What are those goals? And, then it stops being an actual funnel and it just turns into a series of disconnected activities.
Absolutely. And like I've even seen the fact where maybe there's a marketing qualified lead that's handed off, but they're not sales ready. And so they just get rejected entirely instead of put back in on a nurture path, which is a super missed opportunity. What tactics do you see currently driving the strongest results in GovTech? And what traditional approaches, I think you mentioned the in-person events, what other approaches are becoming less effective?
Yeah. So what I'm seeing right now is the strongest results are really coming out of more targeted account focused programs, not the broad volume driven tactics that we've historically relied on. I've seen firsthand when you narrow your focus to a smaller set of strategic accounts and really build an integrated program around them, the results are just significantly better. In one case, when I was at NetApp, we saw engagement that was 10x higher than industry benchmarks and drove 150% of our ARR pipeline. That's when it really clicks that the depth matters a lot more than the breadth in this market. And I will go back and say, this is where that relationship with your sales leadership, making sure that you understand their business growth plan and getting them to commit to a set of target accounts around the 3 specific land, expand, protect, or you can call it grow, acquire, protect, whatever your company calls it, that is where you can really have such significant impact. Things like account-based programs, but not just in isolation. You have to tie them to the real business priorities, right? And then the broader integrated strategy, not one-off things. Looking at me, well, we don't really sell that to our public sector customer. And then I'm going back to my marketing leadership going, that doesn't work for my market. And quick campaigns don't work either. We need time and consistency and repetitiveness. You're building engagement over time across multiple touch points and often across a year or more. And the programs that stand out are the ones that are going to combine thought leadership, relationship building, and really, really consistent engagement. It's not one touch, it's not 20, it's 30, sometimes 50. And at Gain last year, we heard on stage, it was an example of someone who had done tracking in her organization. She was the new CMO, and she was tracking 100 touches or more. And on the flip side, I think what's becoming less effective is anything that's disconnected from strategy. One-offs, quick win tactics, pressure, anything that's pressure from corporate, just get this out and run something around it. Changing your messaging every 3 months. Or just trying to drive a high volume of leads without a plan for what happens next. It doesn't work anymore. And even rethinking events, the tried and true conferences, GeoInt last year, TechNet Cyber right now. I think it's going to be interesting to see what we see across Davidic, TechNet Augusta, IndoPac, FCO West was lighter this year. We are seeing more engagement in full houses at the Carasoft events that we're seeing, like DGI and GovExec, that they're kind of focusing here in DC, or the smaller events that are kind of targeted to one customer set. And that's why TechNet Augusta will be an interesting kind of test to see how that does this year, because the base is right there, right? And I think, over relying on lead volume as a measure of success, it drives the wrong behavior. So the shift I see happening is really just moving away from generating leads to really focusing on influence and precision. It's understanding the growth in this space comes from building relationships and staying engaged over time, and not just filling a funnel. And I think that we as marketers, especially in companies that focus on multiple markets, have to be that voice in partnership with the sales leadership in public sector. And if you're just within a public sector company, just really sticking to your guns and being that marketing leader that helps guide them, because you will see success if you stick to that game plan.
Absolutely.
And you'll learn from it. You will get the data. You will get the data back to learn and grow from it. Not everything is successful. We know that. Not everything lands. So sometimes it is trial and error. It's, A and B testing. But when you hit the sweet spot and you find those things that work, keep doing them.
Absolutely. And, media is changing, the government decision makers and priorities and budgets are changing, and the solutions and even the vendors government is going to buy these solutions and solve these problems is changing. So even if something was a slam dunk last year, doesn't mean it's going to be a slam dunk again this year, whether it's the messaging or the content type or the platform you disseminate it on, right? Yeah. It's a whole new game. So really listening to sales and client facing staff and listening to the data that you're getting back through your channels can really help you sharpen.
So thinking about the shifts and how can you make them work for you? How can you take advantage of the tools now so that you can be more focused on the success of the programs that you're running? Invest in some new things, try some new things, make it strategic, and then really, kind of be targeted and measured. But I think there's a lot there. And everything's changing so fast, but it's exciting to be a marketer in this time as well.
Let's talk a little bit about marketing automation systems And, I know those can create efficiency, and we can set up nurture drips and put people on paths, et cetera. But it can also create disconnected experiences. And especially when you have other touch points like SDRs and sales and client facing staff, if it's, an existing client, how can marketers better balance marketing automation with personalized outreach?
Yeah, it's an important topic because automation can be incredibly powerful, but it can also create a lot of disconnect if it's not used the right way. We kind of touched on that several times so far. For me, it really starts with the mindset that automations should support your strategy, not replace it. What I've seen happen, especially in larger organizations, is that automation gets built out in a way that doesn't actually reflect how government buying works. Disconnect. Systems, they're fragmented. They're not aligning to how sales teams are operating. And then everything just doesn't work. So the balance is going to come from grounding everything into your account strategy first, knowing who you're targeting. Where they are in the buying cycle is also really important. We haven't really touched on that, but understanding, is this something that has already been tracking for 12 months? Like it's already working in process, because your marketing around that's going to be different. And also how you measure success around that's going to be different than something that is a little more in like the sales capture cycle, the BD and capture cycle, 36 months out, right? What are the top priorities? And then how do you build the automation to support that and not run separately from it? And I think that a lot of the automation gets set up in a one size fits all.
Absolutely. And I kind of align that automated versus manual to even the qualitative versus quantitative metrics and feedback,
Yeah.
right? Because when you're having those alignment conversations and those meetings with sales and SDRs, you're hearing firsthand what content and messages are landing, even if you can't see it in the metrics. Like lots of times, these government buyers, they get hand passed or forwarded something where they're invisible to us on the back end digital footprint of what we're tracking. But very often I've found that that's where you get your biggest internal champions for public sector marketing. So before we wrap up, I think this is all great. Like all of this alignment, all of this, don't just track lead volume. But at the end of the day, some companies may still have lead volume and conversion as their very most important metrics for their public sector marketing team. So for those marketers who still need to rely on those numbers, what are some practical changes they can make immediately to strengthen lead quality and pipeline performance?
I love this question because I've had a lot of experience in this area specifically. And there are a lot of things that you can do right away that don't require more budget or new tools. They really require a little bit of structure and alignment, and then taking ownership, honestly, of understanding the processes that are going on inside of your organization, what you can control, what you can't control. And yeah, so the first thing I always look at is the lead handoff. And some of this is going to be repetitive, but I think hearing it in this context will help, because a lot of times we feel like, oh my God, I don't know what to do. This is really hard. And it is hard. It is not easy, but there are things that you can do. So, look at the lead handoff. If there's no clear ownership on who gets the lead and how quickly they follow up, you're going to lose the conversion no matter how good the campaign is, no matter how good your program was. And even a manual process is so much better than to have nothing at all. If you just sit back and go, well, the Power BI doesn't work for me because I'm public sector, that's not an answer. It's not at the end of the day. And so what can you do to, manually track that process? Get your target lead list in order with your sales team. Contact your sales. My sales ops leader was my best friend. Every month he pulled a list of every single account and every single new deal or every single new opportunity that had been opened, and every single closed won, closed lost. I was able to manually track against our lists. The second piece I would say is aligning with sales and priorities. And a lot of teams are still casting too wide a net. If they come to you with a list of 100 target accounts, it's not a target account list. It's not. But when you focus on a defined set of accounts and opportunities, everything's going to become more intentional and much more tied to pipeline. And at the end of the day, it's about building the business. It's about pipeline conversion to revenue outcome. I'm also a huge believer in regular communication rhythms with SDR and sales. The teams that do this well are having weekly check-ins. That's what I used to do. They're reviewing leads, reassigning when needed, and staying really close to what's happening. And that can, in and of itself, make an absolutely huge difference in follow-up and conversion. And then the shift on how we measure things. If you're only looking at leads, you are missing the bigger picture. Now, if it's volume, great. Conversion is going to be your best friend. And so these other things are going to be really important. But I do think that, making sure you're bringing the brand into the conversation is really important as well, those brand metrics. But the most effective teams are tracking the account and the opportunity level so they can actually see how campaigns are influencing pipeline and deals over time. Not here. And one of the fastest things you can do is audit the lead flow. Pull up your lead list inside whatever CRM you're looking at and look for the breakdowns of where did they go? Unassigned leads, delays in follow-ups, misrouted records, gaps between systems. Shall I go on? No. In a lot of cases, there's so much value just sitting in your system already that hasn't been acted on. And what I would say, your sales team might argue if it's been sitting there for 3-4 months, it's too late. I don't agree with that. I don't even agree that 6 months is too late. I think if you start a nurture campaign around leads, get them rerouted, get them in the queue, start a nurture campaign around them. There's still value there and you will still find conversions. I promise you. And the last thing I'd say, it's about prioritizing alignment over activity. Most teams don't need to do more. They need to make sure what they're doing, it actually connects back to the business and pipeline. Don't waste cycles on things that don't have impact. Figure out the alignment and really work towards it and aligning it with the business and the pipeline. That is the absolute best thing you can do. Because when it's all in place, conversion improves actually pretty quickly. You would be surprised.
Absolutely. And when you're, it's right. As marketers, lots of times conversion is that form capture, right? And so, but from a sales perspective, getting that lead converted to an opportunity and then getting that opportunity to progress stages in your pipeline, in your sales cycle, so you can have that marketing influence pipeline, that's really going to matter. And I loved what you were saying about start somewhere, like manual. If you have to track manual, if you have to lead score manually, you can prove out the science of how it will impact. And you can even use that as business case to get investment in tools or to change a lead scoring process or build a lead scoring process. So those manual things will not be for nothing. And they might even give you deeper understanding when you're touching each part of it and scoring it and using your brain than waiting for the tool to tell you when it's sales ready.
110%. And when you have done the manual where you know your stuff inside and out and you've actually done the work to find the breakdowns, it gives you the business case to go and ask for corporate attention.
So true. Lesley, I really appreciate your time, and I'm sure our listeners will walk away with some actionable strategies for refining their own demand gen efforts, improving lead flow, and driving stronger marketing performance across the GovTech buyer journey. So thank you so much.
No, thank you for having me. And if there's anyone listening that has questions, please reach out to me. I'm on LinkedIn.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Branding the Beltway. If you're looking for an outsourced marketing partner or fractional marketing leadership who truly gets the GovCon sector, Piper Strategies is the team to know. We're not just here to deliver, we're here to empower. For resources or to inquire, visit piperstrategies.com.